Welcome to this video. In this video, I would like to explain you 10 useful tips in SAP ERP and SAP S4HANA to become faster. So with those 10 tips, you can work faster with the SAP system and have a better working experience. Enjoy this video and let's get started. The most obvious tip is to use transaction codes to execute transactions within the SAP system. So here in the top left area there you can see the OK code field or command field, and if you type in a transaction code, so for example the transaction code Myro, then you will enter up in here to enter incoming invoices. So this makes you really faster with the SAP system. So the second option to execute transaction codes is within the favorites menu. So there you can double click to execute a transaction, or you could also use the area menu. So on here, the SAP Easy Access menu, there you can open up some folders, some nodes, and double click on one transaction on one node. So this makes you really fast. So how can you identify transaction codes to get to know the transaction codes for transactions? So as mentioned here within the SAP Easy Access menu, there in the tree structure, you see the transaction code in front of a node. So you can set this up under the menu functions extras and settings, or you could also use the key combination Shift and F9. And then here you can select the setting display technical names. If I set this to inactive for now, then we see directly that the transaction code is not showing. And again, under settings, extras and settings, there you can select this checkbox and then the transaction code will be shown. For example, if we're moving over to another transaction code, the SE16N, the data browser, then also in the bottom right area, there you can see the system information, and in here you can also show the executed transaction code. If this is not shown, then you can click on this dark triangle, and then you can also choose transaction to show the transaction code in the footer in the bottom right area. And what is in this case also really important is to use key combinations and shortcuts in general. So in here we are in the data browser in the SE16N, and for example, if I would like to move over to another transaction, then I have to use a prefix. It's the /n prefix, and then I can type in, for example, the transaction code Myro to move from one transaction to another transaction. If I would like to execute the transaction without the prefix, then I have to go one step back to go into the start menu, into the SAP Success menu, and then type in this transaction. So for example, the Myro, then I don't need the prefix. So if you set the focus into this command field and then hit the F1 key on your keyboard, there you see a nice description and documentation about the command field. And here, for example, as shown there with the prefix /n, you can move from one transaction to another transaction in the same session or window. If you're using /*, then the initial screen is skipped. If you're using /O, then you open up the transaction code in a new window, in a new mode. And for example, if you would like to use the shortcut /I, then you delete the current session. And for example, if you're using /NEND, then you log off from the system, and there you will be asked if you really want to log off. And if you're using /NEX, then you log off from the SAP system, from all of your sessions without being asked. So keep those shortcuts in mind. It makes you faster and easier to work with the SAP system. And a quite useful hint on that side is that you're using key combinations in general. I think the most important key combination is the key combination Control Shift and 7. So here we see right now that the focus is in the invoice state. and then I using Shift Control 7, and then directly see that the focus has been set into this command field, and then you can directly type in your transaction code and move from one transaction to another transaction. And you have a lot more shortcuts and key combinations. So for example, if you would like to submit your inputs, then you can use the enter key on your keyboard. If you're using Control S, then in most cases you can save your data, or you can post some data, and keep those shortcuts in mind. And I can really recommend to hover over some buttons, some menu function, and there you always see the key combination. So for this button, for example, I can click on the button, or I could also use the key combination Control and F9. The same for this button, Shift and F9, or also for some menu functions. So for example, over here we see that I can go back with F3, I can do this one with Control F9, or under here I always see the key combination, the shortcuts, to use those functions easily and faster without using my mouse. Because if you're using your mouse, that's totally fine, but then you always have to move your mouse, and with the key combinations you will come a lot faster with the SAP system. And another really important key is the F8 key on your keyboard. So for example, if you're moving over to the data browser, then in here you can execute the selection with this button, or you could also use the F8 key on your keyboard, or as mentioned with Control S, there you can save your inputs with Control N, or with Control plus you can open up a new window. It has the same effect as if you would click on this button. With the F3 key, I'm moving to the Miro. So with the F3 key, you can go one step back. With the key combination Shift and F3, you can exit the transaction. And with F12, you can cancel the transaction. With the F1 key on your keyboard, there you can open up the documentation of this field, and with the for help on your keyboard, there you can open up the search help. And if you're using in an input field or a date field, F4 and F2, then you will take over the today's date. So in this case, the 17th of November. And for example, if you're using Control Y, you can copy it, and with Control C you can copy it, and with Control V you can paste it in. So keep this in mind, hover over different elements in Zimpro and learn those shortcuts and key combinations. So and normally you log in into the SAP system by double clicking on one connection and then typing in your SAP username and your password, hitting enter, and then you are logged in. And honestly, I think there's a faster way that you can use to log in into the SAP system better. And for this, you can create a shortcut. Once you've clicked on this button, there a new pop-up will occur where you can enter the title, which is shown in the SAP GUI shortcut. And under type, you can define between or select between three different options: a transaction, a system command, or a report. And what does this SAP GUI shortcut do? So basically, once you've double clicked on this, then this, in this case, transaction is executed. And if you are not logged in to the SAP system, then first of all, you will be able to log in into the SAP system with this pre-filled SAP user. You can change it if you want to, and just enter your password, and then you're logged in quite fast. Under system description, there you select your system that you would like to select to log in, and under client, there you enter your client and that you would like to log in. So keep in mind that you can't change your client, and the pre-filled logon language once you have created the SAP GUI shortcut. If you're using different clients with different languages, then you have to create multiple SAP GUI shortcuts. But for sure, you can change your pre-filled SAP user. And under location, there you can specify where you would like to create your SAP GUI shortcut. And once you've clicked on finish, then your SAP GUI shortcut is created and ready for being used. So, and to show you this, I first of all log off from the SAP system, and here I double click, and then I see that one pop-up occurs where I can type in my password. So in this case, my password, as mentioned, you can change your SAP user if needed. Then you can click on log on. And then you're logged on into the SAP system and can start working. Maybe a pop-up will occur for the SAP GUI security because the local machine is trying to access the SAP GUI, the SAP system. And there you can click on the allow button on the left button. And if you don't want to show this pop-up in the future, then you can select the checkbox remember my decision. I also recommend to set up a start transaction under the menu function extras and set start transaction or the key combination shift and F7. You can create and set up a start transaction, and in here you have to enter your transaction code. So for example the Miro, and then once you've hit the enter key on your keyboard or clicked on this button, then the start transaction has been created, in this case Miro. And the next time I am logging into the SAP system, then directly the transaction Miro will be started. And so you don't have to enter the transaction code after logging in. This will directly be started. And for sure, with the prefix /n, you can always move from one transaction to another transaction. So for example, if we are in the Miro, and then you can always move to another transaction, for example, a data browser with the prefix /n. And if we're moving one back to the SAP Easy Access menu, you can always change your start transaction. Again, on the extras, set start transaction, for example, to another transaction, the SE16N. And then you have changed your start transaction. If you would like to delete it, then again on the extras and set start transaction, you can delete it and confirm your input. And then this definition of a start transaction has been reset. I also recommend to use favorites. In here you see the folder named favorites, and with your right mouse button there you can choose between different options. You can make on the favorites, you can open up this folder, you can delete all favorites, you can insert a new folder. So for example, I would like to name it as ERP_up, and you can also insert a transaction. So for example, once this pop-up has opened up, then you can type in a transaction, for example, as 16 for the data browser. And if you want to, you can add other objects, for example, a web address or file. And with double click, there you have the options to type in a text, for example, ERP app, and under the web address, I type in https://erp-app.de to my German speaking SAP blog. And with this button, you take this over and continue. I have already created one entry, and so with right click and then delete favorites, then I can also delete it if I want to. And in the menu function favorites, there you have a lot more functionalities. So for example, again, you can add one, you can change one, you can move one up and down, you can delete one, the scene functions, and if you want to, you can also download your favorites menu to your local PC. You can send it to a colleague, and the colleague can upload this favorites menu from the PC. So this is quite nice to share your favorites menu with other colleagues. And I really recommend to set up favorites, So directly with double click, you can execute this transaction instead of entering the transaction code in the command field or searching and executing the transaction in the area menu, for this case in the start menu. And this is really great to use. And one additional hint is, for example, if you would like to insert a transaction with a specific namespace, so starting with a slash. So for example, UI2 slash FLP, it's a transaction code for starting the SAP Fiori Launchpad. And keep in mind that normally if you would like to type in such transaction codes in the command field, that you have to put a slash n up front. But in here, in the favorites, they don't have to type in or to use the prefix slash n. You can directly type in this transaction code, and then you can hit this button or the enter key on your keyboard. And then this has been added, and with double click, it can be used. And there's one possibility to add favorites without the favorites menu. So for this case, I open up a new transaction. It's the FBL1N transaction code. It's a transaction for the vendor line item. And in here, we can add this transaction to our favorites menu with the shortcuts percent underscore GCADDF. So once again, percent underscore GCADDF, and then with enter. So now nothing happens, but if we're moving back to our start menu, then here we are seeing that this transaction has been added to our favorites menu directly in this transaction. And I also recommend to use user parameters. So for example, if in here we're opening up the transaction Miro for entering incoming invoices, then in here directly we see that we have to enter a company code. So in this I enter 1010, and in here you can also use user parameters to pre-fill a value, a standard parameter in your daily work. So especially if you're working just in one company code, in one cost center, then you can use this user parameters that those value will be pre-filled by default. Of course, you can change the values afterwards, but it makes you faster that those values gets pre-filled. So to access the user profile, first of all, you can use the transaction SU3 in the command field, or on the system user profile. There you can also select user data to access your user profile, and under parameters there we can maintain our user parameters. And in here for sure you can use the for help to search for your user parameter and then type in your value that you would like to set. So in our case, once again, we're moving to the Miro, and here we're seeing that this company code has been pre-filled because we have previously entered it. But if you set the focus on the company code, hit the F1 key on your keyboard and click in here in the technical information, then we get to know the parameter ID of this value. So in this case, it's BUK. And here you can select it, use Control C to copy it because we need it afterwards. I will close this for a second. And moving again back to our user profile in here, and then we can paste it in, and for example using 7010 as the value for the company code, and then I save it. And after saving my changes, then once again, I open up the Miro, and here we're now seeing that this value has been pre-filled into this field. In here we are seeing the default area menu, the SAP Easy Access menu, the start menu. And as mentioned in here, you have nicely grouped and structured different transaction codes. And when you open a folder, a node, there you can double click on one transaction to execute this transaction. And if you want to, in your user parameters, so for example in the SU3 and the defaults tab, there you can set up your own start menu that you would like to show in the start menu in the SAP Easy Access menu. And first of all, now we're seeing the default menu, it's the S000. But if you want to, you can also use the F4 help and execute a search to search for different area menus that you would like to use in your daily work. So especially I know that the area menu WEDI is an area menu for transactions around the IDOC processing. So I will now save it, and here we directly see and then now the default area menu is still showing, but once I've clicked on this on the SAP menu, then it will move over to the WEDI area menu. And in the future, for example, if you log in once again, then still this area menu will be shown and is being used. So this is really helpful, and especially if you are in the start menu, there you also can enter your area menu in here. So for example, if I would enter S000, then we are moving over to the area menu, the start area menu. And this is really nice that you get to know the different area menus, to know new transaction codes, to get to know new areas in there. And if you want to, you can also create area menus on your own. So for example, there you can open up the transaction code SE43N in the command field, and then we are in here, and for example in here you can type in your area menu that you would like to set up. Keep in mind that this area menu has to start with the letters Y or Z or your specific namespace, and in here I'm just typing set underscore ERP underscore up, and then I click on this create area menu button, or you could also hit the F5 key on your keyboard. Then you can enter a little description. So in my case, just ERP app. I click on create area menu, or you could also hit enter key. And in here you have basically two important buttons. You can with this button add an entry as a subnode, and with this you can add an entry at the same level. You can also use the shown key combinations, Shift and F8 for this case, or Shift and F7 for this case. And because here we are in the root, we have to click on this button, and there you enter up in here to show different and to set up different transactions, or you can also use different menus. And for this case, I just want to add two transactions. So for example, the Miro and the SE16N, and then I hit enter. And now we're seeing that this has been created as a folder because this is now shown, but I want to link it to a transaction. So here, once again, the Miro and the SE16N. If you want to, you can change your shown text if you want to. Now I hit enter, and now this is not a folder. I would like to set it up as a transaction. You can change, as mentioned, the text as you want to. Then I can hit enter button, and here I see that those two have been taken over, and with the save button or the key combination Control S, I can set it up. Here you can specify a specific package. In this case, it's just my tempo package for demo purposes, and with the save button I can set it up. And now once again, if I'm in the start menu and here I type in set underscore ERP underscore up, then I move over to this created area menu, and once again in the user parameter under default I can also set it up as this one, save it, and then this is also shown. So once again, WEDI, clicking once again to this. So this is really helpful to set up your own area menu. Here we are in the transaction ME23N to display purchase orders. And in here, I would like to show and explain you the forward navigation. So the forward navigation can be executed with your mouse by double clicking in one specific input field or on one element in the Dimpro in the window. So in this case, in here we have a material, it's a TG10, and with double click I can move over to the transaction MM03 to display materials. And this is really nice, especially if you just would like to get to know some detailed information about one object, and you can directly double click on this element instead of opening up in a new window the MM03 and then type in this material number, select your specific views that you would like to use to display this material. And for example, those, click on continue. You can also select your organization levels if you want to. And then you are in the display mode of this material. So as you might have seen, this takes a lot more time instead of just double clicking on one element. And if you, for example, moving back to this one, then you can directly with this back button or the F3 key on your keyboard, move back to the initial executed transaction. In this case, it's the ME23N. And there you can start working, and you can just try it out, double click on one specific element, for example the vendor, then you see that you will move over to the transaction BP because the MK03 is obsolete. But for example, if you click in here, then there is no forward navigation supported. So just try it out, get a feeling, get familiar with the option, but this is really nice feature within the SAP GUI. So in here I have currently opened one SAP GUI window. You can open up new windows with this button, new GUI window, or if you want to, you can also use the prefix slash also, for example, for the SE16N. And if I now have opened up 3 windows and click multiple times to this window, again, and once again and once more. Then after opening up 6 windows, then I get this pop up, this window that the maximum number of SAP GUI sessions have been reached. And there you can identify the maximum number of SAP GUI sessions in a profile parameter I would like to show you in the transaction R set 11. And in here you can type in R this slash max underscore alt underscore modes, hit enter, and here we currently see that this value has been set to 6 down here. And here you see that currently I am allowed to open up 6 different windows, 6 different modes, and I can really prefer working with different modes. If you want to move from one transaction to another transaction within this mode, within this window, you can use slash n SE16N, for example, to move over to the data browser. But this makes you really faster. For example, if you would like to search for specific values, if you directly want to work in another transaction, so you can work in parallel in different transactions. So now we've seen all 10 quite useful tips and tricks to make you faster working with the SAP system, with SAP ERP and SAP S4HANA. And now I would like to give you one additional hint to become faster and long term. So basically, ask yourself how you can become faster on your own. What are some tasks that take you a lot of time? Where do you maybe get stuck, or where could you maybe become faster? And always ask yourself every time, just maybe a couple of minutes, how you can become faster. And with those behavior and with those questions, you really become faster and long term on your own. And now I'm quite interested in what are your most important tips to become faster in SAP ERP and SAP S4HANA. Write them in the comments. I'm really interested in getting to know those tips and tricks from you. Thank you very much for watching. Hit also the like button, subscribe for free, and then see you in the next video.